On this episode of RevHang, Ben and I talk about the Austrian Grand Prix. Let's do it. Hello everybody and welcome to RevHang. I'm your host, Nathan Nevue, and alongside me today is my fellow car enthusiast and co-host, Ben Bagley. How are you, Ben?
Good. It's good weather outside. I got a new mic, so I'm no longer speaking through a cheap little headset, so hopefully it works out well.
Awesome. You sound awesome, so I'm excited to get started. We've got a bit of a shorter episode today. We've just got the Formula One Austrian Grand Prix to talk about, but let's just dive right in.
Alrighty.
So, this was a sprint weekend. We had qualifying on Friday, the sprint race on Saturday, and then the main feature race on Sunday.
Yeah, the order really messed me up. I completely forgot about watching on Friday, and then I got to Saturday, and I was like, this isn't qualifying.
Yeah, it kind of snuck up on us. I wasn't I didn't even know it was a sprint weekend until we got here. So, luckily I was able to catch qualifying, though. I was actually at work while it was happening, so I just got to listen on my headphones. But, yeah, it was a pretty normal qualifying at Austria, except for the fact that we had two Mercedes spinning off the track and crashing.
Oh, man.
Doesn't happen to Mercedes that often.
No, especially not to Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah. Lewis doesn't crash very often. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes like that, so it was kind of interesting to see that happen. But anyway, the qualifying order, the top 10 at least, were Verstappen, Leclerc, Sainz, Russell, Ocon, Magnussen, Schumacher, Alonso, Hamilton, and Gasly.
What a great qualifying lineup.
Yeah. We got some interesting people in there. We got two Haas's in the top 10.
And two Alpines.
Two Alpines in the top 10. Yep. Sergio Perez qualified 4th, I believe, but he had a time from Q2 deleted after qualifying was over, and that dropped him down all the way to P13 after qualifying was over.
Ended up being a theme this weekend.
Yeah, track limits were enforced in a big way this weekend compared to in the past. So, yeah, we'll talk about that a little more later because it got even more intense after that. But moving on to the sprint race on Saturday morning, started. It didn't start yet. Alonso had an electrical issue and couldn't actually get out of his starting slot on the grid for the formation lap. And the team actually left his tire blankets on the car when they all cleared the grid. So,
that's so weird.
Yeah, it was kind of not what Alpine wanted to start their sprint race. They ended up having to pull Alonso into the pit lane, and they weren't able to get his car running in time, so he was unable to take part in the F1 sprint race.
Yeah, it was just a weird situation to watch. That it wasn't just the tire warmers being left on, which is what I thought it was. It was a completely separate electrical issue that, who knows, Alpine just didn't know about, or...
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's weird, because, I mean, obviously he did qualifying the day before, so it was very odd that his car all of a sudden had this issue. But he wasn't the only one that had issues. As the rest of the grid came around on the formation lap, Guan Yu Zhou, actually his car came to a stop before he could get to the grid. He said his engine just shut off.
The first of many Ferrari engine problems this weekend.
Yeah. It seems like, man, Zhou has such bad luck with reliability this year.
He's got to have the worst luck.
It's gotta be up there. I mean, basically, if you're in a car with a Ferrari engine, this is just part of how the season's going for you.
Yeah.
They're just kind of blowing up left and right, but we'll talk about that more later too. yeah, so his engine just stopped working. He was able to get it started again, but the rest of the grid needed to go around and do a second formation lap because they weren't sure if Joe was going to be able to get started again. But he did, so he started from, I think, the pit lane. And then the race finally, actually, after all of that drama, finally got underway. Verstappen, Sainz, and Leclerc had a pretty feisty scrap in the first 4 corners during the first lap of the race. Sainz was really, really aggressive, which I think is good to see. He's definitely gaining confidence after that win in Britain.
Yeah, I think hopefully Ferrari doesn't let that confidence affect his and Leclerc's race for too many races, because they're having a bit of a scrap during the sprint that kind of, I think, hurt their chances for a little bit.
Yeah, they definitely lost time to Verstappen, who got out in front and then pretty much gapped the field and kept it that way for the rest of the race. It's hard to say if they would have caught up to him again had they not been fighting for the first half of the race, but yeah, I'm still happy that we at least got to see that battle and that they're at least letting them race each other for a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a fine line between giving good team orders to maximize your points and actually allowing your drivers to duke it out themselves.
For sure. So off the start, Gasly crashed into Lewis Hamilton before turn 1 and spun out, ruining his own race like that. Not great, but at least, he had the race the next day to kind of make up for it.
Yeah.
Norris and Ricciardo cut their way through the field throughout the race, kind of together. They were kind of in tandem the whole weekend.
Yeah, it was real interesting. It actually seemed Ricciardo was a little bit faster than Norris throughout this weekend.
Yeah, he had a poor qualifying, but he was always on Lando's tail and kind of following Lando through, so I think they both had good pace in the races at least, but the weekend was not awesome for McLaren. But they did recover in the end during the race on Sunday. But back to the sprint race. Albon got a 5-second penalty for forcing Lando Norris off the track. I don't know if that was completely necessary. I think the 5-second penalty was a little harsh, looking at what actually happened.
Yeah,
Albon was aggressive and got his elbows out, but he also had the right to the corner. So I don't know. I think it might have been a little harsh with the penalty, but it is what it is, and it seems like the stewards were definitely not afraid to get involved in the racing this week.
Yeah, just part of the precedent from this weekend, I guess.
Yeah. So Leclerc and Sainz, like we said, battle back and forth for the first 10 laps or so. Sergio Perez started 13th after his penalty in qualifying and made it all the way up to 5th place in the sprint race.
Yeah.
Really,
and, I was kind of disappointed that the broadcast didn't really show much of his race and just how he's able to claw back.
Yeah, the TV direction this weekend was questionable at best at some points.
It had moments of brightness, but yeah, I would have liked to see a little bit more of Perez going from 13th to 5th. I think that would have been kind of entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I think so too. After that, Alex Albon had another incident and hit Sebastian Vettel and spun him off the track. I don't remember for sure if he got a penalty for that one. I think he did.
I believe he got 2 penalty points.
I don't remember for sure. It was pretty 50-50. They both kind of ran into each other, so
yeah. Poor Vettel.
I don't know.
It was not the first time he was going to be hit and run off the track.
No, it was a rough weekend for Sebastian Vettel as well. But it was a very good weekend for Haas and Mick Schumacher, who really proved his worth in F1 this weekend. He had several battles with Lewis Hamilton over the course of the weekend, and this first one in the sprint race, he was very entertaining. he got his elbows out and kept Lewis behind him for several laps. He was aided by the DRS of his teammate Kevin Magnussen in front of him for 4 or 5 laps, but then Magnussen, with all the fighting behind him, was able to pull away a little bit outside their DRS range, and then Hamilton was able to overtake Schumacher eventually. But it was a fun battle to watch for sure, and really, really cool to see kind of the next generation, even bearing the Schumacher name, fighting Hamilton. I saw a picture on Instagram. It was just a side-by-side of Michael Schumacher and Lewis Hamilton battling, and then in the next one it was Mick and Schumacher. It was like the same track, same corner. It was really cool.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Yeah, it was cool to see in Canada, and it's cool to see him continuing a little bit of momentum from that race. And even, speaking up a little when he thought the team should have made some different decisions in terms of where Magnussen was in the sprint, whether he should have been there or not, to help him with the DRS a little more. It was cool to see him not, have a great race and then make some kind of rookie mistake or try to be too aggressive on a pass or something like that, or even just bad luck, and actually finish a race in the spot that he was fighting for.
Yep, absolutely. So he did finish P9 in the sprint race, just outside the points, with Lewis Hamilton taking up that last points-paying spot. So yeah, let's just go over the top 8 then. As the race finished, Verstappen came over the line first, winning the sprint race and starting on in P1 for the future race. Behind him was Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. And then in 4th was George Russell, followed by Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, Kevin Magnussen, and Lewis Hamilton in 8th. So, that was the sprint race this week. Like the others, it had some exciting moments, but overall wasn't too much going on. So let's just go on to the feature race. Verstappen got a really good start. Pulled away pretty quickly on lap 1. There was some fighting between the Ferraris, George Russell and Sergio Perez behind him. Russell hit Perez in turn 4, spinning him around as he tried to overtake, which got Russell a 5-second penalty. It was actually a really similar incident to the incident with Lewis Hamilton and Alex Albon.
Yeah.
I think a year ago or 2 years ago? 2 years ago, yeah.
Yep, 2 years ago.
Same corner, same track, and it looked almost exactly the same with the Mercedes taking out a Red Bull.
Learning from the best.
Yep. So, moving on, Schumacher passed Hamilton early on, then moving around for a few more laps, and Leclerc was able to catch up to Max Verstappen on lap 12 and pass him in turn 4. Verstappen after that pit pretty early, basically accepting that he was going to drive a 2-stop race, which at the time wasn't really known if it was a 1-stop or a 2-stop yet. Turns out the tire degradation was high enough to where pretty much everybody had at least 2 stops.
Yep.
So Hamilton passed Schumacher and Magnussen back on lap 15 to advance. Magnussen got a double overtake on Fernando Alonso and Guan Yu Zhou on lap 25, and then Norris on the same lap also got a double overtake on Fernando Alonso and Mick Schumacher. And in fact, it was almost a triple overtake on Kevin Magnussen as well. But Magnussen was able to defend his spot, just barely.
Yeah, that was such a cool series of just several laps where it's so close in the midfield, so competitive. Just those 5 cars just ready to pass each other, good passing, and even after the passes took place, they're all super close together.
Yeah, the racing was very good in the midfield this race. It was really tight for the majority of the race, and there was pretty much constant action back there behind the leaders. So that was kind of where the entertainment was this race.
Yeah, and luckily the direction was smart enough to actually focus on that for a while that was going on. So.
Yeah. So Leclerc hit on lap 27, and then Sainz followed him in on lap 28. Hamilton overtook Esteban Ocon for a net 4th place on lap 30. And then Charles Leclerc, after getting undercut by Verstappen, Verstappen was able to pass him basically with a pit stop, and had 12-lap fresher tires. Leclerc had 12-lap fresher tires after he pit, so he was able to catch back up to Max on lap 33 and pass him into turn 3, which is the really tight borderline hairpin at the top of a hill that's really easy to sail right through.
Yep.
So we had some more passing with Schumacher and Magnussen going at it. Verstappen pit again on lap 38 for hard tires. I think he thought he was going to go to the end of the race on those, and that was the original plan. So he was back behind the 2 Ferraris and a couple of other cars he made quick work of. Pierre Gasly spun Sebastian Vettel around in turn 4 on lap 40, which got him a 5-second penalty. It was basically a carbon copy of the Hamilton, the Russell and Perez incident.
Yep.
So it was a pretty easy penalty because it looked exactly the same.
Yeah. No, that happens 2 times during a race, and this is a pretty quick turnaround on the 5-second there.
Yeah. Charles Leclerc came in to pit again on lap 51. There was a virtual safety car. That was later on. Leclerc pit under green on lap 51, I believe, and was able to catch up and pass Verstappen on lap 53. Carlos Sainz had an engine failure on lap 57, to everybody's dismay.
Oh.
It's rough to watch.
No, it was terrible. It was like somebody just stuck a frag grenade under his engine fairing, and you could see it just exploding underneath the car.
Yeah. In the replay they showed him pulling up to a stop, and as he was coming up to stop, the entire back half of his car just like you just see it looks like a bomb went off in there.
It just ignited.
Yeah. Pretty crazy. Unfortunate for Carlos, and you could hear the pain in his voice over the radio as he was telling his team.
Yeah, you see him pull over, and he's just talking in the radio, and everybody, you can see on the outside is like, this dude's car is on fire. He should probably get out of there.
Yeah.
So that was interesting, and the stewards took a little longer to react than I thought they would.
Yeah, it was kind of tough.
But yeah, I'm surprised they went for a VSC instead of a full safety car too, considering there is a car just completely disabled on the side of the track. Yeah,
I was not entirely sure about that. I mean, obviously it ended up working out, but I would have called a safety car if it was me. But yeah, he pulled over to the side of the track and put his car into neutral and took off his steering wheel. But since there's so many hills in Austria, he was parked on an uphill, and so basically every time he took his foot off the brake, his car would start rolling backwards towards the track.
And he'd slide back in to try to stop it, and then he'd try to get out again. It would just roll back. It was
bad. It took the stewards way too long to get out there to help him stop rolling the car. So yeah, his car's burst into flames, and the flames are now growing. He can't stop his car, so I was like pretty convinced for a second there that he was going to jump out because of necessity, obviously.
Yeah.
And then his car was going to be a flaming piece of metal rolling back onto the track across the racing line. I was ready for something really spicy to happen. But
fortunately that didn't happen.
Yeah, fortunately that didn't happen. They called the VSC. The stewards got out there in time and put a wheel block underneath his front right tire to stop the car from rolling. They put out the car pretty quickly and ended up not being a huge safety hazard, but definitely a big disappointment for Carlos Sainz, as he was literally, as his engine blew up, he was going to overtake Verstappen for P2.
Yeah, that was super unfortunate timing, and of course, Ferrari now has a large project ahead of them to repair not just the engine, but all the bits that also caught on fire. Because so much of these cars are made of carbon fiber, and you don't really think about it, but carbon fiber is pretty flammable. Or at least the resin that holds it all together is.
Mm-hmm.
So they lost a lot of the car there. And it wasn't just the bodywork that they're going to have to replace because of the fire.
Yeah. Big repair bill for Ferrari for sure. Not ideal under the cost cap era, but, you know, they're going to have to make do. I know that the FIA has started to work with some teams on some solutions for the cost cap. I think they are increasing the cost cap just by a little bit to account for inflation, since the world has changed quite a bit since the regulations were introduced in like 2019.
Yeah.
A few things have happened since then.
Oh, really? I hadn't noticed.
Yeah.
Is Sainz already on his third engine or third power plant swap, or does he still have some swaps before he gets penalties?
I don't know for sure, but I would be very surprised if he wasn't on penalties starting next time.
Yeah, it's just
like he'll probably have a penalty in France, if I were to guess.
Yeah, it's a rough position for Ferrari.
Yeah. That's just been kind of the story for them, though, this season. Everybody with the Ferrari engine, they just blow up.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure Joe has some recommendations for them.
Yeah, he's got some experience. But yeah, I don't know. They're gonna have to look at their engine during the off season and try to figure out what they can do, because they can't keep replacing engines every 2 races.
No, that is not sustainable in any era, much less cost cap.
Yeah. So Leclerc and Verstappen, under the virtual safety car for Sainz, decided to come in to the pits on the same lap. Kind of neutralized their strategic battle a little bit, since they both got new mediums on their cars. So there was about a 4 second gap between Leclerc and Verstappen towards the end of the race. And that started dropping pretty quickly as Leclerc had some problems with his throttle. Getting stuck open.
The easiest way to make your car go faster is just to remove the bottom 30% of your throttle, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, his throttle kept getting stuck open, and that was creating problems. Obviously, slowing him down. So Verstappen was able to cut the gap to about 2 seconds, maybe a little under, by the last lap. And then also towards the end of the race, George Russell passed Esteban Ocon for P4. But the race ended with Leclerc winning, followed by Verstappen and Hamilton.
Yeah, so luckily Leclerc is able to hold it off. Next to Ferrari's training roster is probably putting Cougars in the car, Talladega Nights style, to help their drivers train after removing their throttle pedals.
Yeah. So fastest lap went to Max Verstappen, and the driver of the day went to Mick Schumacher.
Woohoo!
Deservedly so.
Yeah. Haas just had a great weekend.
Mm-hmm. Haas has been on form recently. But the results for the race, Charles Leclerc won, followed by Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton on the podium. 4th place went to George Russell, followed by Esteban Ocon, Mick Schumacher, Lando Norris, Kevin Magnussen, Daniel Ricciardo, and Fernando Alonso, rounding out the top 10 in the points finishers. In 11th place was Valtteri Bottas, followed by Alex Albon, Lance Stroll, Zhou Guanyu, Pierre Gasly, Yuki Tsunoda, and Sebastian Vettel in 17th. That rounds off the race finishers. And then the non-finishers were Carlos Sainz, Nicholas Latifi, and Sergio Perez.
All right. Let's talk about those Ferrari engines, shall we?
So yeah, Ferrari had some reliability problems again this week. Not just them, but their engine customers as well. Not they're not making any ground on that front. It doesn't seem.
Yeah, no, they're not getting the JD Power Reliability Award anytime soon this year.
Yeah, they need to figure that out if they're gonna win championships, because I think it's already too late this year. But we'll see.
Yeah, although it is interesting that Bottas has been able to avoid every, like, I don't think there's been a race that he hasn't finished because of engine problems.
Bottas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of one. Yeah, most of the time his problems come in like practice sessions, and then Zhou is the one with all the problems in the races.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I don't think Bottas has even taken an engine change at this point.
He's definitely taken an engine change, just no penalties. I think he had an engine blow up on him in Miami, I think. But that was during practice.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, but he's definitely had better luck than pretty much any other Ferrari driver, I'd say.
Yeah. Although Haas didn't seem to have any problems. Their engines were moving quite quickly on this track.
This week, yeah, for sure. Haas is definitely improving, like, overall. Their drivers are getting better. Magnussen's back on form. Schumacher is looking way more confident in his car. 2 points finishes in a row after not finishing in the points for like a season and a half.
Yeah, and the critical part is Haas hasn't really been spending that much money on upgrades. They didn't bring any upgrades to the past couple races.
They actually haven't upgraded their car this season yet.
Really, all season?
From what I understand, yeah. I think they do have some coming for France and Hungary, I believe, and then I think they'll have more after the summer break. But yeah, it's just straight up driver improvement at Haas, which is really good for them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the pairing of K-Mag and Mick has actually really helped, too. It seems like Mick's kind of leveling out a little bit as he goes on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think he was just in his own head a lot.
Yeah, and races like Miami, where he was also in the points, and he went for what was honestly a pretty foolish overtake attempt on Vettel. That ruined his race. He's starting to make less and less of those mistakes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it took him this long in F2 also. It wasn't, towards the middle of his second season that he really started coming into his own.
That's true, yeah. His first season was just kind of mediocre in F2, and then the second season he won the championship. So, might just be he's still just getting used to F1 and how it works and the cars and stuff like that. I mean, it's understandable. A lot of rookies take a while to really start to, find their feet. Like Yuki Tsunoda has improved a lot this year, even though in the last couple races he's had some moments. Overall, he's a lot better than he was last year for sure.
Yeah.
But I would say Guan Yu Zhou is having a very good rookie season. Well, not points-wise and finish-wise, but in terms of how he's driving and the, where he's at on the track when his car isn't blowing up, he's doing really well. And I think nothing he's done has really been his fault yet.
Yeah, I think he's showing the most potential of any first-year rookie that I've seen in the past few seasons.
Oh, absolutely. He can keep up with Bottas on a good day.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's shown that. So now he just needs a more reliable car to go along with the potential.
Yeah, exactly. So other teams we have struggling. McLaren struggled a lot this week. Qualifying.
Just barely squeaked into double points.
Yeah, they qualified P15 and 16, and then I think they were either 12th and 13th or 11th and 12th going into the race. But yeah, double points finish with Norris in 7th and Ricciardo in 9th.
Yeah, so just barely enough to stay ahead of some rivals, but they're going to have to start picking it up because Alpine also finished double points, and Ocon was in super great form this race.
Mm-hmm. They both were. Alonso absolutely destroyed everybody else in the field. Because remember, he started from the pit lane.
Yeah, so
Because of his
he had to fight his way
problems.
up.
Yeah, so he started last out of the pit lane, and like you said, had to fight his way through the field. He was up there, kind of, P6 and 7 for a while, and then we had some more racing and strategy, mix-ups happen, and then he ended up dropping back to like P10, but he had really good recovery drive, and he was right up there in that gaggle of 5 or 6 cars in the 5th through 10th area.
Yeah.
There was quite a big group that was fighting for most of the race there. So really good recovery from Alonso. Can't really complain about that. He comes home with a point. And after what happened in the sprint, I don't think you can really feel too bad about that.
No, I think Alpine maybe got their strategies a little confused, like a lot of teams, with Alonso.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that they thought they could one-stop it was a little laughable, considering where he was. So I think they probably could have planned a little better for that, and maybe gotten him up a little closer to Ocon, but overall, I mean, you can't complain about double points for a team like Alpine.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So AlphaTauri is having a rough couple of races recently. In Britain, they had Yuki Tsunoda making a questionable at best move on Pierre Gasly, his teammate, spinning them both out. Definitely the worst case scenario for them. And then Gasly also had that crash with Zhou and Russell in Britain. And then another crash with Lewis Hamilton in the sprint race here. So
and then another crash with Vettel during the race.
Yep, forgot about that one too. And then Yuki Tsunoda shoved Alonso off the track.
Yeah. There's the track limits penalty that Gasly picked up.
Yep. AlphaTauri is having a rough part of the season. Hopefully they can turn it around.
They're looking so good at the start of the season too, especially Tsunoda, who's essentially really consistently showing up Pierre Gasly those first few races, and they both dropped back to kind of mediocrity.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a really good word for it. I mean, they're just kind of not where they need to be.
No, especially not for a team with a Red Bull power plant, which we know is one of the fastest on the grid.
Yep, for sure. So hopefully they can turn their bad form around in the near future. I know this next race is the French Grand Prix, and that is Pierre Gasly's home race. So he will be looking to perform for sure. Like you said, track limits were enforced very harshly this race.
It felt like every minute a new banner would show up on the F1 TV broadcast, saying that a driver had either been black and white flagged or had been penalized for track limits. And it wasn't really evident watching the race, but as you went back through some of the driver cams, you could see that there were definitely some exceeding of the limits going on.
Yeah. There was no mercy for the drivers this week. But, I mean, keeping the car on the track is part of the sport, and I would rather have this than what it has been in the past, where it's kind of just no one really knows what the rules are, and so it's just up to the stewards to decide what's illegal and what's not.
Yeah, trying to discern whether advantage was gained or whether a place was lost or whatever from using the track limits.
Yeah, I like the rules better, where if all four of your wheels go off and cross the white line, that's your warning there, and then 3 warnings gets you black and white flag, and then the next time you get a penalty.
Yeah, so it's a lot easier as viewers too to keep track of what's going on.
Yeah, I would love for them to keep enforcing limits this way. The one thing I will say is if they do that, they really need to have a graphic for penalties on the driver board, because it was impossible to figure out who actually had like 5-second penalties and who didn't at the end of the race. So I actually, for like most of the midfield, I had no idea who actually finished where.
Yeah, I just kind of assumed that they all had penalties and that it evened out.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's an easy track to exceed track limits on. You know, you don't have enormous curbs or super tight walls or anything like that, or even a whole lot of gravel really close to the track. You have big runoff areas, and it's just easy for drivers to maybe abuse that a little more than they should.
Yeah. That's the thing, is it's a track where exceeding track limits actually gains you an advantage, where a lot of the tracks that's not the case at all, which is why a lot of the track limits rules aren't really enforced as strictly at other places, is because in a lot of the time you're not actually gaining an advantage by leaving the track. But at Red Bull Ring, most of the times people do leave the track. Is going wide at either turn 1, 3, or 10, which just gives you the opportunity to get a way better exit out of those corners onto the long straights that follow, which can gain you, several tenths of a second of an advantage per lap. So it's definitely important that it's enforced in Austria. But like I said, I think it should be enforced everywhere, just so it's clear for everybody. If you go off the track, then your lap time gets deleted. I think it should just be as simple as that. I mean, people might have to drive slower, but that's part of the challenge of it.
Yeah, and like you were saying, it's an easy track to accentuate it on because it's so predicated on those. It has so many long straights, and the exits out of corners is so important there. So that's why you saw so many of the track limits being exceeded right before those long straights.
Yep. So yeah, that was kind of one of the big stories of this race. Just a few more notes. Hamilton is looking very good, back on form, back the Lewis Hamilton we know and love, or maybe have gotten bored of winning for the past 8 years. But he's back on form. Definitely looking like the driver that Mercedes needs him to be. Clawed his way all the way up from P8 to P3 at the end. And then George Russell also had a good recovery drive coming from, he started P4, I believe, but he had that 5-second penalty after clashing with Perez early on. He was able to recover back to P4 after quite the race.
Yeah, it was pretty good that he was able to recover for that. I wasn't quite sure where that would put him after that penalty, but luckily it was early enough in the race.
Yeah,
he was able to escape unharmed for the most part.
Yep, good recovery. And then Valtteri Bottas, I think, just as a side note, it was a great selection from Alfa Romeo last year, because he really seems like he wants to build the team up and help them improve overall. He always asks about Joe after the race and cares about where he is and where he finished, and just the overall development and performance of the team. I think in terms of long-term Alfa Romeo getting to, I'm sure they want to be at the top of the field, I think Bottas was absolutely the right choice for them. Yeah,
definitely. And I think it's good to have, the rookie who can learn, but also the more experienced driver who can guide and assist with not just teaching the rookie, but development of the car. Kimi Räikkönen always felt kind of like an absentee dad at Alfa Romeo towards the end there. He was, kind of hanging out, but I think Bottas is helping a little more actively in his role there.
Yep, I'd say so too. He definitely comes with the experience and the knowledge to develop a car. Obviously, he was with Mercedes for a little over half their big championship run, so he's got the knowledge and knows how to make a fast car. So yeah, good selection from them. But that's all we got to talk about for this race. So let's go over the championship standings. We are now halfway through the 2022 F1 season. So we'll just go first to last, just because it's been a while. 21 people have driven this year. First place with 208 points is Max Verstappen. In second, Charles Leclerc with 170 points. In third place is Sergio Perez with 151 points. In fourth is Sainz with 133, followed by George Russell with 128, and Lewis Hamilton with 109. Those are your top 6. That's the top 3 teams, and that's kind of the championship battle right now. Past that, in 7th is Lando Norris, and followed by Esteban Ocon and Valtteri Bottas, and then Fernando Alonso in 10th. In 11th is Kevin Magnussen, followed by Daniel Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, Sebastian Vettel, Mick Schumacher, Yuki Tsunoda, Zhou Guanyu, Alex Albon, Lance Stroll, and Nicholas Latifi in 20th. And then in 21st place, our man, the myth, the legend, Nico Hulkenberg.
Good old reliable.
He had the couple of races at the beginning of the season, subbing in for Sebastian Vettel, who had COVID. All right, and then for the Constructors' Championship, in first place with 359 points is Red Bull Racing. Following them in second is Ferrari with 303 points, 56 points behind them. And then Mercedes with 237 points. After that, in fourth and fifth are McLaren and Alpine, respectively, both tied at 81 points. And then Alfa Romeo is 6th with 51. Haas is 7th with 34 points. AlphaTauri is 8th with 27 points. Aston Martin is 9th with 18 points. And bringing up the rear is Williams with 3 points.
Yeah, how long has it been since we've seen Haas outside of, 10th?
It's been a second. It is good to see them kind of clawing back. They had such a good last couple of races that, they're up to 7th. Like, that's respectable.
Yeah, and most of those 34 points came from these last 2 races. So if they keep it up, they're gonna eclipse Alfa Romeo pretty quick after summer break.
Yeah, it looks like that's going to be an interesting battle shaping up, is Haas versus Alfa Romeo, which, I mean, I guess that's about the same as the last few years, but they're a little higher up in the field this time. And then McLaren Alpine is the other one, and then Mercedes is almost assuredly going to get third place. And then
they're in kind of a no man's land right now.
Yeah, Red Bull Ferrari, honestly, if Ferrari can win a couple more races, regardless of where the other Red Bulls lie, like, they can get back into it. But they really need to sort out their reliability problems, and they need a couple of bad races from Red Bull to really have a shot.
Yeah, I remember start of the season it was the opposite. Red Bull was having all the reliability problems, and Ferrari was just free and clear. So it's anyone's game still.
Absolutely, it shows you how quickly things can change in this sport. But yeah, so half the season is done. We've got another, I think that was that 11 races, so we've got, I think there's 23 races, so 12 more. So I guess not technically halfway, but just about. It's looking like a pretty good season. I think it'll get spicy towards the end if Ferrari can start winning a little more. I think they've just really had a run of bad luck, and that's kind of a lot of their problem right now.
Yeah, that and just poor pit strategy.
It's like the 1 week they had perfect strategy and fast car that could actually beat Red Bull on pace. They have an engine failure. It's like, that's just such a Ferrari thing right now. They just can't get everything to work together at the same time.
The worst luck.
But yeah, that's the other thing. It's like Carlos Sainz was able to pass Verstappen purely on pace, not because of, Verstappen having a problem or whatever. Carlos Sainz was legitimately faster than Verstappen this week, and that was, I think, one of the most encouraging things he can take away from this race.
Yep.
They've got a good car. They just need to not shoot themselves in the foot. Yeah,
they need to combine all the pieces.
Yeah. So that's it for the results. Let's move on to the overtake of the week. I gave this one to Fernando Alonso, overtaking Yuki Tsunoda in Austria, not because of the difficulty of the overtake, which is what I've been doing in the past, but for style points.
Yeah.
So Yuki Tsunoda coming out of turn 3, Fernando Alonso went down the inside. Yuki Tsunoda on the preceding straight shoved him off the road, so Alonso had 2 tires in the grass. Alonso kept his foot in it and was able to pull up beside Yuki Tsunoda on the straight and wag his finger at him out the side of the car while he was going into the braking zone and making the turn and overtaking him.
Yeah, it was so weird. I did not expect that.
Yeah, so Fernando Alonso with the finger wag while he was overtaking Yuki Tsunoda, that was just an absolutely legendary move. But some honorable mentions go to that double overtake by Kevin Magnussen, and I if it was for skill points, I would have given it to Lando Norris. Yeah. For his double, almost triple overtake in turn 3. But
yeah, unfortunately, he didn't have the style to pull it off.
Not quite. Fernando had a little bit more style points on him, and I couldn't let that go unrewarded.
Yeah, well, even passing somebody after coming off the grass is no small feat either. So there's a little skill involved there.
Yeah. So pit stop championship time. This race, it was won by Williams. Nicholas Latifi had the fastest pit stop this week.
I forgot he was in this race, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, he retired early, so he had his pit stop, and then I think he went out for a couple more laps and then retired.
I see.
But yeah, he had a problem with his car. But anyway, he won the pit stop race this week, taking home the maximum 25 points. And he was followed by both Ferraris of Sainz and Leclerc, and then Max Verstappen behind them, followed by Daniel Ricciardo and Lance Stroll. And then we had Yuki Tsunoda and Fernando Alonso, Sebastian Vettel, and George Russell rounding off the points. So Ferrari had a very good week of pit stops. They actually, I think, matched their fastest pit stop of the year, or at least got pretty close to it. So I think Williams might have actually gotten the fastest pit stop of the year this race. I'll have to double check on that, but that sounds pretty close to right-ish to me.
Yeah, Ferrari's actually having just really consistent, really fast pit stops. It actually kind of helped until one of their engines blew up. They're able to gain a couple of tenths on even Red Bull every stop. Right.
So let's just go through the pit stop championship standings for the drivers. It's still Perez and Verstappen out in front by a mile, and then Lando Norris is still in third. The Ferraris, I think, moved up to 5th and 6th, so Leclerc's in 5th, Sainz is in 6th. Past that, nothing super interesting, but in the Constructors, we actually have some movement.
Incredible.
And Ferrari passes McLaren for second place.
Wow.
So, actually, I was not expecting that, because Ferrari's not known for their pit stops.
No.
But they're doing good this year. They're up into second place. Still have less than half the points that Red Bull do. But, take what you can get, right?
Yeah. Speaking of taking what you can get, can we talk about the GP predictions?
Oh, for sure. We can absolutely talk about the GP predictions. You did really well this week.
Really well, he says. I got 2 places correct.
And your dark horse, and your fastest lap.
Oh, we both got fastest lap.
Yeah, we both got dark horse too.
Yeah.
But, I mean, considering the past, where it's mostly just all wrong, I think this is pretty good.
We gotta take what you can get.
Yeah. So do you want to go through your predictions for... Actually, let's just remind everybody the top 5. It was Leclerc, Verstappen, Hamilton, Russell, and Ocon. Do you want to go through what you picked last week?
Yeah, so I had Perez as first. Yeah, and then I had Verstappen, which I actually got. Hamilton, which I got. Leclerc ended up being first, so I missed on that one. Sainz didn't finish the race. Not really something I expected. And Russell ended up coming in fourth. So, good job, Mercedes, for keeping me in the fight, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, my top 5 picks were Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Russell, and Sainz. The only one I got right was Russell in 4th place. And then for my dark horse, I had Lewis Hamilton, who ended up finishing 3rd.
Yep. Yeah, so maybe we need to keep the Mercedes drivers in the back of our heads whenever we make these, just to ensure that we at least get some wins.
Yeah. Yeah, Mercedes is definitely faster than they were at the beginning of the season, so
Oh my gosh.
it's going to be probably more likely to see them up in the top 5 more often. Fastest lap, we both said Verstappen, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So it was Verstappen, so we both got that correct. Unlike driver of the day, where it went to Mick Schumacher. What'd you say, Ben?
I said our penalty king himself, Pierre Gasly.
Pierre Gasly, the man who I think acquired more penalty points than championship points this week.
Yeah.
So, yeah. He did not win driver of the day. I said Sergio Perez, who retired in like lap 10, I think, or maybe it was a little later than that, but pretty early on in the race, so he did not win either. That's
no, if this was a KD competition, Gasly would have won easily.
Mm-hmm.
He had the highest ratio of confirmed kills on the track, I think.
Yeah, he's got that great positive KD. So let's go on to our French Grand Prix predictions. I went first last week, so do you want to pick your top 5 first this week?
I guess I could. I'm not gonna shake it up too much at the top. I think Verstappen's probably gonna have that first place. And then after him, I'm going to put Perez. After him, though, I think I'd like to see Ocon on podium. And then, because, it's France, I'll put Lewis Hamilton and George Russell fourth and fifth. And then for my dark horse, I'll have Leclerc. No,
Okay.
did I say Leclerc?
I don't remember what you said second.
No. Okay, we can go through this. First, Verstappen. Second, I'll put Leclerc second. How about that?
Okay.
Third, Ocon. Fourth, Lewis Hamilton. Fifth, George Russell. Dark horse, Perez then.
Okay. Wow, the Ocon pick kind of throws the wrench in things, doesn't it?
It really messed me up.
Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna say. I'm gonna say Carlos Sainz wins this race.
Wow, the comeback.
Yeah, my reason being he's gonna have but he's gonna have an engine penalty. I was gonna say it's because he's gonna have a brand new engine, but yeah, he's gonna start pretty far back, and he's not great at cutting through the field if I remember correctly. So, I'm gonna give it to Leclerc then. Verstappen second. Hamilton third, Russell fourth, Perez fifth, and then I'll put Sainz as my dark horse. All right, fastest lap predictions. Let's see. I'm gonna give it to Verstappen.
I'm gonna mix it up. I'm gonna give it to Leclerc.
Okay. Driver of the day.
It's gonna be. I'm gonna say Pierre Gasly again.
Okay. I'm gonna take something out of your book, and I'm gonna say Esteban Ocon. Both of us going for Frenchman.
I'm starting to sound like an Ocon fanboy, aren't I?
Yeah, a little bit. It's fine. He's pretty good.
He seems like a nice guy.
Yeah. Kind of an underdog story coming from being out of F1 for a couple years.
Yeah.
All right. Sweet. So do you have anything else you want to address before we sign off, Ben?
No, I think I'm content to leave this one a little shorter than usual.
Yeah, not too much shorter than actually, but
Yeah.
yeah, we had a lot to talk about this week, so glad we were able to stretch it out a little bit. But with all that being said, thank you everybody so much for listening to this episode of RevHang. If you enjoyed it, leave a like or rating on the platform you listened on. It really helps us out. If you'd like to follow our thoughts and opinions on the motorsport world, follow us on Instagram and Twitter at RevHang Media. If you have any thoughts or questions about racing, or even about us, post a tweet at #RevHangPodcast, and we may feature your question on the next show. You can follow Ben on Instagram at BenjiMeetsWorld, and or myself at 2win_squared. While you're at it, go check out our website, RevHang.com, where you can find a calendar of upcoming races, updated standings for the racing series we talk about, along with our often terrible predictions for the F1 season. We will return in 2 weeks to talk about the French Grand Prix, as well as 3 IndyCar races, but until then, I have been Nathan.
And I have been Ben.
Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks for coming, guys.